The suburban streets of Baldwin, Long Island, are quiet now, but in the summer of 1935, they would become the epicenter of one of the most shocking murder cases in American history, a case that would expose the dark heart of a woman the press would dub the Black-Eyed Borgia. On September 27, 1935, Ada Applegate collapsed in her home, writhing in agony. Within hours, she was dead. Her husband, Everett, claimed it was a sudden illness, but the truth would prove far more sinister. The woman responsible for Ada's death was someone she trusted implicitly, her best friend and housemate, Mary Frances Creighton. But this wasn't Mary's first dance with death. By the time Ada Applegate breathed her last, Mary Frances Creighton had already perfected her deadly craft, leaving a trail of poisoned bodies stretching back over a decade. This is the disturbing true story of the Black-Eyed Borgia. Mary Frances Avery entered the world on July 29, 1899, in Rahway, New Jersey. Tragedy struck early in her young life when both her parents died while she was still a teenager, leaving Mary and her siblings to be raised by their maternal grandparents. The loss of her parents at such a formative age would leave deep psychological scars, creating a void that Mary would spend the rest of her life trying to fill, often at the expense of others' lives. She was not known as an exceptional student, but Mary possessed something far more dangerous than academic brilliance, an innate understanding of human nature and how to manipulate it. As she blossomed into womanhood, Mary learned to weaponize her charm, using her dark eyes and winning smile to disarm those around her. These were the tools that would make her one of the most effective killers of her generation. In the early 1920s, Mary married John Creighton, and together they moved in with his parents in New Jersey. The young couple also welcomed Mary's teenage brother, Charles Raymond Avery, into their household. To the outside world, they appeared to be a loving, close-knit family weathering life's challenges together. But beneath this facade of domestic harmony, Mary was already plotting her first murders. The deaths began in 1920, starting with John's parents, Anna and Walter Creighton. One after the other, they fell mysteriously ill with similar symptoms: violent stomach pains, vomiting, and a gradual wasting away that doctors of the time struggled to explain. Both died within months of each other, leaving behind grieving children and a series of unanswered questions that would haunt the family for years to come. But Mary's appetite for death was far from satisfied. In April of 1923, her brother Charles Raymond Avery began experiencing the same terrifying symptoms that had claimed John's parents. The 18-year-old, who suffered from tuberculosis, grew increasingly weak and gaunt. For weeks, Mary played the role of the devoted sister, nursing him with apparent tenderness while secretly administering the poison that would kill him. On April 20, 1923, Charles Raymond Avery died in excruciating pain. Mary and John moved quickly to collect his $1,000 life insurance policy, with Mary named as the primary beneficiary. She had also inherited his trust fund, providing her with a financial windfall that would fund her increasingly comfortable lifestyle. But Charles's death would not go unnoticed. 4 days after his burial, prosecutor John O. Bigelow received an anonymous letter that would change everything. The letter accused Mary Creighton of slowly murdering her own brother, describing in chilling detail how she had been systematically poisoning him over the course of several weeks. The subsequent investigation revealed the horrifying truth. When Charles Raymond's body was exhumed and examined, forensic experts found lethal levels of arsenic in his remains. The same poison that had claimed John's parents was found in the young man's system, establishing a clear pattern of serial poisoning that pointed directly to Mary Frances Creighton. On May 12, 1923, Mary and John Creighton were arraigned for murder. The case that followed would captivate the nation, as prosecutors painted a picture of a cold-blooded woman who had killed her own family members for financial gain. Mary had carefully chosen her victims, people who trusted her implicitly and who had no reason to suspect that the woman caring for them was actually poisoning them with each meal she prepared. Arsenic was Mary's weapon of choice, and she wielded it with deadly precision. Known as inheritance powder in criminal circles, arsenic was virtually undetectable in the 1920s unless specifically tested for during an autopsy. It could be easily mixed into food or drink, and its symptoms often mimicked common illnesses, allowing killers like Mary to operate undetected for years. The trial revealed the methodical nature of Mary's crimes. She had not killed in passion or desperation, but with the cold calculation of someone who viewed murder as simply another means to an end. Each victim had been carefully selected based on their financial worth to her, and each death had been meticulously planned and executed over weeks or months of gradual poisoning. However, the justice system of the 1920s was not prepared for someone like Mary Frances Creighton. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, she and John were acquitted due to a lack of eyewitnesses to the actual poisoning. The legal system required direct evidence of the act itself, and Mary had been careful never to be observed administering the fatal doses. The acquittal was a devastating blow to justice, but it would not be the end of Mary's story. Emboldened by her legal victory, she began to see herself as untouchable, above the law and beyond the reach of conventional morality. This hubris would ultimately prove to be her downfall. Following their acquittal, Mary and John relocated to Long Island, New York, seeking a fresh start away from the whispers and suspicions that followed them in New Jersey. But Mary could not escape her own nature. The urge to kill, once awakened, had become an integral part of who she was. In 1934, the Creightons, now with 2 children, daughter Ruth and son John Jr., moved in with Everett and Ada Applegate in Baldwin, New York. To the outside world, it was a practical arrangement between friends, but it would soon become the setting for Mary's most devastating crime. Everett Applegate was a man of questionable character, and it didn't take long for him to begin an affair with Mary. But his interests extended beyond the married woman to her daughter, Ruth. By June of 1935, the 30-something man was sleeping with the girl, creating a web of sexual and emotional dysfunction that would have explosive consequences. Ada Applegate, Everett's wife, was growing increasingly suspicious of the activities taking place under her own roof. She had begun to piece together the truth about her husband's infidelities and was threatening to expose the entire sordid affair. For Mary, Ada had become a liability that needed to be eliminated. The method was familiar: arsenic, administered gradually over several days. Mary prepared Ada's meals with the same loving care she had shown her previous victims, all while slowly killing her with each bite. Ada's symptoms began in late September: severe stomach cramps, persistent vomiting, and a weakness that grew more pronounced each day. On September 27, 1935, Ada Applegate died in agony, her body racked by the effects of chronic arsenic poisoning. But this time, Mary had made a crucial error. The medical community had advanced significantly since her earlier crimes, and forensic science was beginning to catch up with killers like her. The autopsy on Ada Applegate's body revealed massive amounts of arsenic in her system. Unlike the cases in New Jersey over a decade earlier, this investigation was thorough and methodical. Police began to uncover the web of sexual scandal and financial motivation that had led to Ada's death. Both Mary Frances Creighton and Everett Applegate were arrested and charged with murder. The case would become a sensation in the New York press, which dubbed Mary the Long Island Borgia and the Black-Eyed Borgia, comparing her to the infamous Renaissance family known for their use of poison to eliminate enemies. The trial began in early 1936, and from the start, it was clear that this would be different from Mary's previous legal experience. The prosecution had overwhelming forensic evidence, clear motive, and witnesses who could testify to the suspicious circumstances surrounding Ada's death. Mary's behavior during the trial revealed the true extent of her psychological disorder. She showed no remorse for Ada's death, no grief for the friend she had murdered, and no concern for the devastation she had brought to multiple families. Instead, she maintained the same calculated charm that had served her so well in the past, apparently believing that she could manipulate her way out of this situation as she had done before. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours before returning a verdict of guilty. Both Mary Frances Creighton and Everett Applegate were sentenced to death by electric chair. The speed of the verdict reflected not only the strength of the evidence against them, but also the public's revulsion at the nature of their crimes. In the condemned cell at Sing Sing prison, Mary showed few signs of despair. True to her narcissistic nature, she remained convinced that she would somehow escape her fate, buoyed by the prospect of a favorable appeal. Even facing execution, she could not accept that her reign of terror had finally come to an end. On July 16, 1936, Mary Frances Creighton was strapped into Old Sparky, Sing Sing's electric chair. In a final act of defiance, or perhaps overwhelming terror, she fainted before the switch could be thrown. She was executed while unconscious, bringing an end to a life that had been dedicated to death and destruction. The case of Mary Frances Creighton stands as a chilling reminder of the capacity for evil that can exist within seemingly ordinary people. She was not a figure from a Gothic novel or a character from a horror story. She was a housewife, a mother, a woman who appeared completely normal to those around her. Her victims trusted her completely. They invited her into their homes, shared their meals with her, and looked to her for comfort and care in their final moments. That trust made her crimes all the more heinous and her legacy all the more disturbing. The psychological profile that emerges from Mary's crimes is that of a classic psychopath, charming, manipulative, and utterly lacking in empathy. She viewed other people not as human beings with inherent worth, but as objects to be used for her own benefit. When they ceased to be useful, or worse, when they became obstacles to her goals, she eliminated them without hesitation or remorse. Her weapon of choice, arsenic, reflected the cowardly nature of her crimes. She killed from a distance, never having to confront the reality of what she was doing. Her victims suffered alone, often in confusion about what was happening to them, while Mary maintained her facade of care and concern. The financial motive in her crimes reveals another disturbing aspect of her psychology. Mary didn't kill for passion or self-defense. She killed for money, viewing murder as simply another form of inheritance planning. The lives of her family members had a specific dollar value to her, and when that value exceeded the inconvenience of their existence, she acted with deadly efficiency. Perhaps most chilling of all is the realization that Mary Frances Creighton might have continued killing indefinitely if not for advances in forensic science and a more thorough investigation. Her early acquittals had convinced her that she was above the law, and there's every reason to believe that she would have claimed more victims if given the opportunity. The story of Mary Frances Creighton serves as a stark warning about the danger of assuming that evil must announce itself. She lived among her victims as a trusted friend and family member, sharing their daily lives while secretly planning their deaths. Her crimes remind us that the greatest threats often come not from strangers in dark alleys, but from those closest to us, those who have gained our trust and know our vulnerabilities. In the end, Mary Frances Creighton's legacy is one of betrayal, greed, and the ultimate perversion of the bonds that should unite families and friends. She transformed love into poison, trust into vulnerability, and care into murder. Her story stands as a testament to the darkest possibilities of human nature and the devastating consequences when moral boundaries are completely abandoned. The black-eyed Borgia is gone, but her crimes continue to fascinate and horrify nearly a century later. She remains a symbol of the evil that can hide behind the most ordinary facade, and a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who appear most harmless. In killing those who trusted her most, Mary Frances Creighton didn't just take lives. She shattered the fundamental belief that we are safe in the care of those who claim to love us. Her execution in 1936 brought justice for Ada Applegate and closure for her surviving victims, but it could never undo the damage she had inflicted or restore the lives she had stolen. Mary Frances Creighton had chosen to become a merchant of death, and in the end, death claimed her as well, serving as both her final customer and her ultimate judge.